Martin.
Thank you, Ben. Lance Stroll was rapid in free practice one, but isn't going anywhere at the moment. The car up on the jacks, and Sam will be delighted that we can get to show you the laser leveler in full effect. You'll be able to see it just moving around. Yeah, there you go. If Bob can keep it in shot. It's just moving around. The camera just jotting up and down. And as we pan over to take a look at the car itself, you'll see the little reference points that they've put on the car. There's two on the top of the tub, there's one either side of the Shrek ears on the side of the car, and then there's two on top of the roll hoop as well. The guys were just taking another guide around the side of the car, and they're getting James at the back there just to tighten up some of the stays and pull the floor up a little bit. And they're just using this laser device here, which is locked into the laptop, and they're all taking the data and getting a look just to make sure that everything is as finely tuned as it needs to be before Lance gets back in the car. But Sam, I'm sure you're enjoying watching this. A great insight into the work that goes on in setting up a car.
Yeah, that's a Leica Geosystems T-Scan if you wanted to get onto Google and look it up after the session. This is essentially the spy in the garage. Every single team has one of these. They have to use one of these. And that strange sort of almost insect-like thing in the mechanic's hand there is the contact probe. So you'll see him put the probe on a part of the car. There he goes. Now, that will be, he's showing it to the laser head. The laser will be pointing at that little device, and they're talking to each other. And the little point by the mechanic's right hand is what it's actually tracking. So it precisely maps where that is on the car, and this is part of the team's new self-scrutineering process. So checks the legality of the car. They use the laser to check that the car fully fits within the technical regulations. And for 2022, the technical regulations are written in a very, very different way to in the past. In the past, it was a particular component couldn't be wider than however many millimeters or whatever. Now there's a bunch of legality boxes which come on a CAD drawing, which if you're in the teams, you download from the FIA server, and then this system, the laser, will tell you if your components are inside or outside of what's allowed on that drawing. So that's what the guys on the laptop at the front left of the garage are doing, while the mechanic walks around with that component, just checking to see that everything is fully legal. And so far this season, we haven't seen anyone trip over this laser legality check, but it isn't particularly new, and you'll see the mechanics now moving it because they want to get a look at a different part of the car, and you'll see the mechanic with the other side with the little T-probe go and have a look.
Fascinating. James, it's interesting, isn't it? Because, I mean, that is such a Formula One thing. I'm sure in IndyCar, presumably, you don't have stuff quite like that.
Not quite to that level, Ben, no. I mean, certainly any racing series is going to have, you know, technical regulations and parts that you can and cannot adjust, but to that level of detail and that level of technology, it just really does go hand in hand with Formula One. That's what makes this series just so impressive, and these cars just such works of art, really, is just how much technology goes into it, how much development they've gone through over the last 20 years is remarkable. And yeah, that's a neat little tool. I wouldn't mind, you know, taking that and running it over an IndyCar and seeing what it could tell you.
You could have all sorts of fun.
Well, if you found something different on your IndyCar, Mr. Hinchcliffe, I think your car would probably be disqualified, because your cars will have to be identical in those terms, because you have a spec chassis. So you're not allowed to do too much, are you?
But I think what would be fascinating is to see what sort of natural variation there is when you get the parts from the spec manufacturer, whether it's, you know, brake components, aero components, whatever it is. It'd be interesting to see what sort of tolerances they use, and if you could buy 10 front wings just to find one that's a tiny little bit better. You know, we do it with on-track testing, but if you could do it off-track with something like that and order them before you even put them on the car, that'd be helpful.
Well, what I'll tell you now, James, is that I suspect your team engineers already do that. They just don't tell you about it. So yeah, what they'll be doing is they'll get out little calipers and measure for everything absolutely perfectly. When I was racing in Formula V, actually, we used to buy a whole bunch of pistons because they weren't particularly well toleranced, and find match sets and get the ones that all fit together. So you get your 4 pistons for your flat 4 and get them to fit as closely as possible. But the difference is sometimes down to microns, you know, real small percentages of millimeters. It's really, but it all makes a difference. It all adds up. It's all of those marginal gains. Get it as tight as possible, and that's how you win in motor racing, not just in Formula One, but also in series like IndyCar, where you have fewer options in terms of developing the car. But I do think that the drivers have, you'll probably know about this, there are some little games the drivers play and the engineers play to get an advantage over each other, so which is why you quite often see one good team forming in those sort of series, and that's why they always keep winning.